everybody, it's Chris from the Evermore podcast, your Newcastle United podcast on the Evermore YouTube channel. We're back with another Rumour Has It video with players linked to the club in this crazy silly season. It's the transfer window. And we've got an interesting name this episode. It's been coming up quite a lot, actually, doing the rounds on social media. A lot of other podcasts have been talking about it as well. We're talking about a real class player here. We're going to have a look at him in a minute. And it'll be interesting to see whether the club is actually interested or not, or whether this is just a bunch of ITK noise. But just before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're watching us for the first time, you've tuned in, thank you so much. Consider clicking that like and subscribe button. We're looking to try and get as many subscribers as we can. We're currently close to breaking the 700 mark. We'd love you to do it. And the goal is to get that 1,000 as soon as we can. So fingers crossed we can. We've had loads of subscribers recently on the back of these videos, loads of comments and really supportive, kind words. So thank you so much to everybody who's done that. But listen, without further ado, let's get stuck into this. The player I'm talking about, he's on the lips of every Newcastle fan out there, and it is none other than Christian Eriksen. Now, we knew how good this lad was when he was at Spurs in the Premier League. He was one of the best midfielders in the league by a country mile, you know, in terms of his creativity, in terms of his delivery from set pieces, you know, his ability on the ball. You know, he was an unbelievable footballer. He left Spurs and went into Milan. Didn't have a great time of it into Milan, really, in all fairness, you know. But the big story with Christian Eriksen, sadly, was what happened to him at the Euros. So obviously he was playing for Denmark at the Euros, and as we all know now, he collapsed. He had a heart attack, and Christian Eriksen's a very lucky man to be alive. You know, it was fantastic work by the doctors, you know, on the pitch at the time, his teammates as well, you know, and thankfully Christian Eriksen, you know, survived that horrific ordeal. And he's obviously back playing football now. You know, Serie A kind of couldn't continue his contract because of some bullshit rule about having heart restarting devices, which I don't really agree with. We had an episode about the time, and I was quite vocal about it. I think it's pretty shit, really. But, you know, Inter Milan's loss was Brentford's gain. You know, he went to Brentford, you know, and he went to play for Thomas Frank, obviously a fellow Dane. And people were questioning whether, you know, he'd still have that ability, you know, whether the heart was going to be an issue or not. And he just completely proved everybody wrong, really. You know, he's had 11 appearances last season, 1 goal, 4 assists. You know, Brentford's had a good season, and it could have tailed off, really, if it wasn't for this unbelievable player that they managed to get in through the door. Loads of clubs turned their nose up at him. I don't know whether we were in for him or not, but loads of clubs turned their nose up at him because obviously the heart condition was a real risk for people. He's more than proven that isn't an issue now, you know, and he's obviously come to the end of his short contract at Brentford, and nobody knows whether he's going to re-sign that or not. There's loads of rumours about clubs being interested in. Spurs apparently want to bring him back. I think Everton are sniffing around him as well. And then obviously Newcastle is the other name that's being linked. But you can see there, the stats speak for themselves. I mean, his pass attempts, he's right up there, you know, in the top 79% of midfielders in his position across the 5 top European leagues. His progressive passing, he's in the 93rd percentile. His touches, you know, is kind of his creative goal attempts, his key passings up there. You know, he makes things tick. You can see from his heat map as well. He's everywhere on that park looking for that ball. You know, he made his debut actually against Newcastle when we beat them, and I think, you know, I heard this on the Gallagher Shots podcast actually, and I think they made a really good point that had he had 7 or 8 games prior to that game, that would have been a much harder game for us. But, you know, he's an absolutely fantastic player. You can see that he's played most of his games obviously in centre midfield there, you know, which is where he really dictates the play. So there's a lot of people out there, I think, who are really pro this deal. If it is possible for Christian Eriksen, there is stories that he wants European football, you know, so that might rule us out. You know, you might be looking at Spurs, maybe adding a bit of Champions League quality depth in there. You know, a guy with experience who can play in the Champions League. You know, Conte might fancy him in there to, you know, push Harry Kane a bit further up rather than coming so far deep to get involved in the play like he has been doing. You stick Eriksen in there, then Kane doesn't have to do that. He can be making more forward runs and probably getting another 10 goals plus a season just from Eriksen creating alone. Obviously, Brentford will be keen to have him back, you know, in terms of making them tick, having a full season, you know, helping the likes of Ivan Toney getting even more goals in the Premier League. But if Newcastle have a realistic opportunity here to get this guy, you know, at 30 years old, despite the fact that he's 30 years old, I know a lot of fans have been saying we're not going to, you know, mess around with players who are kind of in the high 20s or low 30s. But I mean, this guy's a cut above. You know, you've only got to look at the likes of, you know, Toni Kroos and Modric in particular at Real Madrid, still stealing the show, you know, well in the 30s. And I think Eriksen could definitely be that kind of player as well. I think he's got another 2 or 3 seasons at the top level because of the way he plays the game, because he's so intelligent, his movement, the way he conserves his energy and he uses it at the right time. Those kind of players can have longevity, can play a long time. If you put him in the midfield with, Bruno and Joe Linton, for example, no disrespect, Shelvey's he's been superb under Eddie Howe, but if you have the opportunity to play a Christian Eriksen next to Bruno and Joe Linton, that's a completely different midfield you've got there. And obviously if it's creating chances for the likes of Callum Wilson and Ekitike, who looks like he's going to be signed as well, I mean, that is a hell of an addition to our squad. I don't know whether we're going to have a chance to get him or not. It all just depends on the recruitment, whether Eriksen's interested in being part of the project, what contracts on offer. I think if Spurs are really serious about bringing him back, I think he'll go back to Spurs because he's got that kinship there. He feels that love from Spurs. He feels at home there. So, I think it'll all depend on how serious Spurs really are at bringing him into the club, whether he's going to get a lot of football there or not. He might feel like he owes Brentford something as well, potentially, for them giving a chance to him, where a lot of people shunned him and turned their back. He doesn't need the money. He's a very wealthy man. He could have retired. He could have stayed away from the game. He could have been in a pundit studio somewhere. There's plenty of TV jobs out there at the minute. I'm sure Eriksen would have walked into either one of them, really, but he obviously still feels he can play. He feels like he can still contribute. And looking at those stats and looking at how good he's been this season, 100% he can. Even when Brentford were playing big games against big teams where they didn't see much of the ball, Eriksen was still taking the ball. He was still shining. He was still standing up there against you, De Bruyne's and guys like that, and he was still looking the real deal. So the guy's definitely got a good year or two left at this top level. If he can spend those 2 years at Newcastle United, I'd love that. But let us know what you think in the comments below, guys. I think Eriksen will be an unbelievable signing, especially on a free transfer. He'll give you that experience, give you that quality. You help the likes of Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff become better players as well. So yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer, but it all just depends on how serious we are making this deal happen and how interested Eriksen would be at joining this project. But again, keep watching the space. If anything breaks with that story or develops any further, we'll be back on to talk to you about it on the channel. If you haven't already, please click like and subscribe. We're really looking to get the subscriber levels up if we can, over 700. We really appreciate it if you can do that for us. It really helps the channel grow, and we've had a fantastic couple of weeks on the channel with loads of new subscribers. We really appreciate it and great to have you on board. But stick with us for the summer. We've got plenty on. We're going to have some ever more specials, all-time 11s, top 10 players of all time at Newcastle United. So keep it on the channel, as well as all these Rumour Has It videos flying in on a regular basis. And yeah, let's keep supporting that team with Call United, and we'll be back soon with some more transfer updates. Take it easy.